Good morning guys, and what is happening? I'm back for another Monday mumblings with these two. On there. What she's in. They love it out here. Not as much as I do though. So I just wanted to talk to you today about why I'm competing, or why I'm prepping for my competition this year in ketosis. Last year I sort of sold myself out a little bit. I started off wanting to compete primarily and paleo, which I believe to be the most sustainable way and healthiest way to eat, and from there I believe your body will find its optimal body composition. But the closer I got to the competition, the more I sort of researched what the people were doing, or what the competitors were doing at the top of the game. Not focusing on the fact that a lot of them on performance enhancing drugs, which I wasn't. And I felt I wasn't lean enough. I felt I lost way too much muscle mass. So this year I've decided to go with the different approach, or what I wanted to go with in the first place, and that is primal and paleo, which it's not by law low carb, but by eating the sort of foods that are ancestrally available. So your veg, your nuts, a little bit of fruit, not too much. People go overboard on fruit, but that contains a lot of sugar, and your body doesn't really know the difference in blood glucose terms between eating an orange or a couple of jelly babies. So I'm going to keep the fruit quite low. I'm going to stick to berries, which are low GI. Meat, fish, nuts, seeds, dairy. I'm going to keep dairy in, full fat dairy. That's all good. Don't believe the old science about saturated fat causing heart disease. I think there's a lot of awareness now that that old science was pretty flawed. So by eating in a sort of a primal based and paleo based diet, you naturally fall into what's called ketosis. Now, what ketosis is, when your fats, or when your body's metabolizing fat, it produces a byproduct called ketones. Now your brain can only run on glucose or ketones, and ancestrally, as we've evolved, and eating a paleo or evolutionary based diet, that sort of became our baseline. If you think the only time we'd have availability to fruits or carbohydrates would have been the fruits, and when they ripened, a few nuts here and there, but majority of it would have been fat based. So it's no surprise that optimal health comes from a fat based diet. So I'm not going to count any calories. I'm going to be purely intuitive eating. So when I'm feeling hungry post training, or days post training, sorry, when my body organically demands more calories. So I'm not going to force my body to eat when it doesn't want to eat. So my diet is going to be pretty much 75% fat. I'm going to be looking at about 20% protein, and the remaining 5% from carbohydrates. So I'm looking at less than 30 grams a day of carbs. And conventional wisdom will have you think that I'm going to lose so much muscle mass from that. I'm going to show that that's not true. Ketones themselves, what the new science is showing, is they're very, very muscle sparing. So going to keep a lot of, nice Grace right there, going to try and keep a lot of the mass on. That's another thing that went wrong last year, when the mind games kicked in and I was, am I doing this right, am I not doing this right? The approach I decided to follow in the end, I don't think, looking back, was quite right. It didn't feel right. Again, this is different if you're on performance enhancing drugs. You can make use of a lot more protein, a lot more carbohydrate, you can train more frequently. So the minute I'm only training once every 3 days. So next week I'll go over my training, why I'm training only once every 3 days, and why I'm doing big full body movements in those sessions. Again, it's all played into this competing naturally. Last year I placed 4th in an untested competition, which at the time I was pretty gutted with, but looking back it was untested. and looking at some of the competitors there was definitely a few performance enhancers flowing about. So this year I'm going to compete in a natural competition, and following that probably an untested. Hard to tell whether the natural one's actually going to be natural. I mean, a lot of people say the shit is everywhere. What is she doing? Sorry, this wind noise is really bad, but I hope that clears a few things up while I'm competing keto. Next week I'm going to go over my training. Anyway, stick close to your plan, stay on your goals, and I'll catch you next week. See you later.